Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so inshallah, I'm going to carry on from where I left off. So let me quickly share the screen. Okay, so you should be able to see that. Okay, try and start from where we left off here. Okay, so in terms of question 6, June 2017, in this extract, there is an attempt to be positive about moving to a smaller house. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. In November 2017, in this extract, the writer attempts to engage the reader through the description of the return to Earth. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. June 2018, in this extract, the writer attempts to show his admiration for Bessie Smith. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. In November 2018, in this extract, the writer attempts to reassure parents. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. June 2019, in this extract, the writer attempts to show different opinions. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. November 2019, in this extract, the writer attempts to show the treatment of Jewish people. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Nothing in June 2020. November 2020, in this extract, the writer attempts to present failure as something positive. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. November 2021, in this extract, the writer attempts to show the negative impact of homelessness. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. June 2022, in this extract, the writer attempts to create a feeling of tension. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Just a quick thing to mention about question 6 is the way they present the question. So, for example, one way they might do it is like this. Leo Marx attempts to engage the reader through the description of his relationship with, quote, the goals, end quote. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Support your views with detailed reference to the text. And it's 15 marks. Another way is like this. In this extract, the writer attempts to create a feeling of tension. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Support your views with detailed reference to the text. So basically, not much difference. The one at the top is from before the 2017 paper, and the one at the bottom is the most recent 2022. So you can see question 6 is pretty much the same, pretty consistent. Now, how about question 7a? If you have a look from the sample paper, it mentions the two texts show the points of view of different spies. What similarities do the spies Nick and Leo share in this extract? Okay, similarities is key. June 2017, the two texts show people experiencing change. What similarities do the writers share in these extracts? November 2017, the two texts show the experiences of astronauts returning to Earth. What similarities do these experiences share in these extracts? Notice how it makes an overview of the general topic of the two texts, then asks you to find other similarities. June 2018, the two texts show singers who are memorable. What similarities do Milton and Bessie share in these extracts? November 2018, the two texts show how pregnancy can change relationships. What similarities do couples share in these extracts? Remember, you're trying to pick up to no more than 6 similarities, but you need to evidence them. So therefore, 12 evidences. And just the quotes. You don't need to explain this can be seen in. Don't do that. June 2019, the two texts show opinions about places to stay. What similarities do the places to stay share in these extracts? November 2019, the two texts show the experiences of certain groups of people. What similarities do these groups share in these extracts? Nothing in June 2020. November 2020, the two extracts show events at the Olympic Games. What similarities do these events share in these extracts? November 2021, the two texts show personal experiences of poverty. What similarities do these experiences share in these extracts? And finally, last year, June 2022, the two texts show events that happened to explorers. What similarities do the explorers Robert and Ben share in these extracts? Now, how about the 7b? This is the big one, okay? So this is where you focus on differences. You can mention the similarities you've already identified, but now you need to explain, okay? So because 7a was missing any explanations. Sample paper. Compare how the writers of text 1 and text 2 present their ideas and perspectives about intelligence agency work. June 2017, compare ... their ideas and perspectives about possessions. November 2017, compare their perspectives about space travel. June 2018, compare their ideas and perspectives about singers. November 2018, compare the ideas and perspectives about relationships. June 2019, compare the ideas and perspectives about staying in a guest house or hotel. November 2019, compare the ideas and perspectives about discrimination. November 2020, compare how Text 1 and Text 2 present ideas and perspectives about taking part in international competitions. November 21, compare how writers of Text 1, Text 2 present ideas and perspectives about experiencing difficulties. So do you see how it's focusing on the writers of Text 1, Text 2, how they present ideas and perspectives about? June 2022, compare ideas and perspectives about danger. Now, what about the way because it's a big question, I'm looking at variation in the way they do the questions. For 7b, is there any? So near the beginning, you had compare how the writers of Text 1 and Text 2 present their ideas and perspectives about intelligence agency work. So there's the question about present their ideas, but it also gives some headers. It says you should write about the ideas and perspectives of the writers, right? Now, remember, we mentioned for 7b, you're supposed to be also, like question 6, talking briefly about the writer's perspective. It's asking you to talk about ideas and perspectives, but I would suggest you connect this ideas and perspectives to theme, because remember, you were supposed to, for 7b, talk about a theme. So whatever the idea and perspective is, just say this is the theme. So for this specific question, when it says, compare how the writers of Text 1 and 2 present the ideas and perspectives about intelligence agency work, say, in terms of the theme of intelligence agency work, Text 1 presents it like this, whilst Text 2 presents it like that. So you use the keyword theme, okay? And in terms of ideas and perspectives, you focus that on the writer of Text 1 and the writer of Text 2. The second bullet point is how are they presented? That's telling us to give examples. And the third one is how they are similar and how they are different. So that's compare and contrast. Support your answer with detailed reference to the text. So don't just make assertions with like one evidence. No, detailed reference. Lots of evidences to back up your point. You're supposed to try and persuade me to your perspective. So the best way to persuade is give lots of examples or evidences. Lacking examples, evidences, I'm not persuaded. Therefore, weaker the mark. How about the second type of variation? Now, most questions for 7b will look more like this one, but you must remember the bullet points that was there before. As I say, it's about theme. Notice it does not mention language and structure, and it's about comparing and contrasting. But look at the second type of question. Compare how the writers of Text 1 and Text 2 present ideas and perspective about singers. Support your answer with detailed references to the text. Okay, so here it's missing the bullet points, like I say, but the bullet points still stand. And notice in those bullet points, it didn't mention language or structure, but that's in the criteria. Okay, and I've already talked about that earlier in the part 1. Okay, what about conclusions? Can we conclude anything about these 8 questions? So very briefly, question 1, identify 2 words or phrases from the line numbers mentioned. Okay, question 2, very same thing. Make sure you identify 2 words or phrases, okay? Now, oh yeah, a thing I do need to mention is previously for the question 2, remember I mentioned that it used to talk about language and structure. So in the past, there was a language focus, and it would say something like how the writer uses language to show something, give an example from the text, and identify devices used. The good news is this seems to be no longer the case for at least 3 years, at least since COVID, but I believe just before that as well. Okay, so it's more about just identifying the words or phrases. What about question 3? You have to focus on the specific lines. That's very important. Make sure you focus on the specific lines. How does a writer use language and structure? You must talk about language and you must talk about structure. That means you can't just talk about language devices and forget structure, because you won't be able to get past a certain threshold in terms of this question. Okay, you can't get past like a grade 3 or a 4. Okay, so if you're trying to get 7s, 8s, 9s, you have to mention language and structured devices. Okay, also don't forget the effect on the reader. How does it make the reader think? How does it make the reader feel? That's your way in after picking out a key quote that connects to the question, then identifying the language or structured device. You end with, okay, what was the point of the device on the reader? What was the effect? To make them think what? To make them feel what? What about question 4 and 5? It's the same. Identify one word or phrase from the line numbers mentioned. However, as I mentioned, question 5 had a language focus before. So in the past, there was this idea of how the writer uses language to show or give an example from the text. Identify devices used. No longer. So it's the same. Question 5 and 4 are the same kind of a question, just like question 1 and 2 are the same kind of question. Same number of marks, same kind of thing you're doing. Okay. How about question 6? So it always talks about in this extract, right? In this extract, something's happening. It mentions that there is an attempt to show, there is an attempt to present, there is an attempt to create tension. Okay. Then it always asks consistently, evaluate how successfully this is achieved. This means you're supposed to say the writer successfully, the writer masterfully, the writer manages to do something in a skillful way. Okay, so these are the kinds of things you should mention. For 7a, it always seems to say the two texts show, and then it mentions what it shows, and then what similarities do the text show in this extract. So as I say, 7a is merely about similarities, and it kind of gives you a little pointer at the beginning. 7b, it says compare how the writers of text 1 and 2 present ideas and perspectives about, as I mentioned earlier. And that's the main thing, right? So I've covered from the question 1 all the way to 7b. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is a common danger, and this is about timing. So in terms of bad timing, this is a common. Common means lots of people do this. So let me tell you what they do and then give you a suggestion. Okay. If you look at here, the big questions, question 3, 6, 7a, 7b. Okay. In terms of marks, this is about 50 marks. You've got 15 for 3, 15 for 6, 6 for 7a, and 14 for 7b. The time spent, and this is doing it badly, is people spend too long on question 3. I mean, way too long, double the time, half an hour trying to get, well, let's say 2 paragraphs, 2 full paragraphs. They're trying to do their best. And they're not even looking at the time. Suddenly they realize, oh my God, I'm running out of time. Then they jump to question 6, they do question 4 and 5. They get to question 6, and then now they're thinking, okay, I need to stick to the time. So if you look here, they do the 15 minutes. And then for 7a, they can't quite spend the full amount of time, so they spend a little bit less. And then they're panicking, so they're not thinking straight, and then they don't finish 7b. Now look at the marks that, let's assume it's an average type of student, that this average student did really well for the question 3. They got maximum marks. So they got 15 marks. That's the maximum they got. But now with 15 marks, they kind of get their usual grade of, let's say, 10 out of 15, which is reasonable. But that's, at a stretch. And now they're struggling because they're panicking. So they can only find 3 things for 7a, and then they're out of time. They get 0 for 7b because they didn't complete it at all. If you add those marks, you've got 29 marks, okay? Just compare if you are trying to focus on the time and assume this is an average student. So this is the law of averages. If you know the tortoise and the hare, if you take the tortoise approach, just steady along, focus on your timing, don't try and focus too much, write so much on your question 3, but you're going to write an equal amount per section and you're sticking to the time. For question 3, you spend 15 minutes, which you're supposed to, And just like in the previous example, for if you look at question 6, he spent 50 minutes, got 10 marks. Let's assume he's just going to average 10 marks. Fine. And then he does the same thing for question 6. That's another 10 marks. Now, for 7A, he strictly does 6 minutes, unless because he's average, he's going to get more than the 3 marks because he's got an extra minute and he's calmer because he's sticking to the time. He gets 4 marks. Let's just give him an additional mark there. 7B, he actually does the same amount as he does for the question 3 and 6. So he gets 10 marks. Add that up, an average of 34 marks. You see, make sure you do everything for your questions. Your average goes higher. I hope this is beneficial. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.